What's up, guys? Thanks for watching the podcast. I truly appreciate it. I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe from you. That helps the YouTube channel grow. And I wanted to drop in and remind you one more thing. If you have any friends, family, or anyone you know looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, please have them call me. Get in touch with me via email at blake@blakebaker.net or on Instagram at blakebakerrealestate. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Under Contract podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Under Contract podcast. This is our 30th episode, and I'm so excited to spend this episode with a special guest. The number one team in the greater Clear Lake area for since 2016, one of the top 100, I think you said top 60 something team in the United States for EXP.
No, number 65, not brokerage specific in the U.S.
Oh, period.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could go on and on. Miss Monica Foster. You can't hear the applause, but the people can hear the applause.
Yay for me. No.
Thank you for doing this on this. So I just noticed it started raining outside, so I appreciate you driving in the rain over here.
For sure.
So, I mean, obviously I know who you are. I've heard your name ever since I got in the business in 2016. But for people who don't know you, just give a little introduction, who you are, what you do.
All right. And I'm like, where am I looking? By the way, I'm like, the camera's over here, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it don't matter.
So I'm Monica Foster. I've been in the business 19 years. I got my start in the Dallas market. So I'm not a Houstonian, which I think a lot of people know, but those who don't, obviously, when they find that out, they're pretty surprised at how quickly I built a business because I came here with no sphere. Like, I knew nobody, right?
Wow, yeah.
I started my team in 2013 because I found that I was turning business away. So I was losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because I couldn't take anybody else on. I think my last year as an individual, so 2012, I closed on 81 homes, which was, I think, like an equal split, maybe 41 buyers and 39 sellers or whatever. So I didn't have any assistance. I didn't have any free time. And I just had a lot of stress and frustration and was still losing money. So I'm like, okay, something's got to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's sort of kind of how I felt in 2020 for the first time, where that, interest drops, the floodgates opened, and I was like, oh, wow, this is how it feels to drown. And,
exactly.
Yeah. So, and it's the type of deal where you're on the phone with someone, you're getting text messages, people are beeping in, and then you have a bunch of paperwork to do at the end of the day, and you're just like, I need help.
Yeah.
So you said you came from Dallas. So were you originally licensed up there and working up there?
I was. So I got my start at Remax Preferred Associates, which is in the Dallas suburb of Cedar Hill. I didn't live in Cedar Hill. I lived in Red Oak, just a small rural town. So I got my start there. I sold real estate there for about 3 years. And even though my husband likes to change the story a little bit, at the time we were dating, and he came down here to take a temporary position for one of NASA's contracting firms. And he came to me and said, hey, this is going to go permanent, and we need to move down here. And I think at the time we might have just got married. He says, no, we weren't. I don't know. It's been so long ago, I don't remember. But so he's the one who drugged me to Houston. I was not happy about it because I'm a Dallas girl. And Dallas and Houston, they don't play well together.
We just found that out, right?
Yeah. So I was like, I don't really want to go there. It's humid, it's gross. But what I came to find is that I actually love living here, and the people are way more friendly than they are in Dallas. Yeah, like hands down. And so Houston's been good to me and to my business. And so here I am, and here I stay.
Yeah. So he came to work for NASA, you said?
He worked for one of their contracting firms, and he actually retired, so to speak, 2018, because he was running, at that time, he was starting to run my books and do a lot of the stuff on the back end for the team. He was doing that and working a full-time job. And so he just said one day, "Hey, I'm just going to stop working there." And I was like, "What? Like, that's our insurance?
Yeah.
I'm not a sugar mama. What is going on here?" So it was just a whole thing. And I was like, boy, that's a lot of pressure on me at the time to be the sole provider. But it worked out obviously very well.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, you are a sugar mama. You just don't know it.
No, I felt like it. I'm like, man, I got a trophy husband or something. I don't know. It was really weird.
Yeah. So y'all still work together?
We do. Yeah. And that was an interesting thing too. That took some adjusting because, I always worked from home, even though when I was at REMAX Space Center, my last year or two, they gave me an office there for free. But they would use it to bring potential recruits by and say, "Hey, this is where Monica Foster's office is." Because at the time, a lot of people would come to them and say, "Well, we want to be where Monica Foster is."
Yeah.
I
think I remember that's where you were when because I was at First Source.
Yeah, yeah. So I told him when he quit, retired, whatever you want to call it, I'm like, "You have to understand, this whole house is my office." Because he would just come downstairs from his office and just start talking real loud, and I'd be on the phone, and I'm like, "You can't do that. Like, this whole house is my office. Wherever I am, that's the office. If it's in the kitchen, that's where it is." And so it was very interesting. The first year, it was very uncomfortable being constantly around him. Thankfully, I was still very busy in production, so it was a little more tolerable. But yeah, it was a change.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad y'all made it.
I know, right? We didn't make it to divorce court. That's the main thing.
Yeah,
So
you beat half the odds.
Yeah.
50% is what they say. So
yeah.
But I always tell my wife, she works at Great American Title on El Camino.
Oh,
and so I always tell her, you stay in title. I will stay in being a realtor. And we will keep it separate.
Right.
And it's worked out good that way so far.
Good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So you were planted kind of here in this area. I've always known you as like the League City girl, the number one, your signs. I saw your sign on Netflix. On the
Oh, really? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, on the I hate to say this, but the Killing Fields documentary about the way back in the day, and see your face on the sign on Netflix. I was like, oh, I know exactly where that's at. So
yeah, that's funny.
So what was this area like when you first kind of started? I know there's some older homes here, but obviously since I would say 2000 or so, this area has absolutely just blown up, and I feel like you caught your kind of timeline in your career at a great time for this area where there was so much expansion.
Well, so I moved here in 2007, like August. My husband was already here.
Oh, it was that late. 2007.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I kept my license active at REMAX Preferred Associates for about 6 months. And then he finally said, "Hey, look, I'm going to send your license back. I think he was trying to rip the Band-Aid off for me, my broker there." And so he said, "You need to find an office and make that decision." And I was like, no pressure. But I knew, obviously, that's where I wanted to be. And so I just obviously had to make that call to, I can't even remember the name of the broker at the time, Helen. I lost her last name now. That's because I'm a middle-aged woman.
At Space Center?
Yeah, Helen Maddox.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he just ripped the Band-Aid off for me. But when I got here in mid-07, actually, we bought our house in March of 07. I remember having to come here to find a house. And back then, I remember my husband driving, and we went over to South Shore because we were looking over there too. And I remember driving down Marina Bay Drive, and the only thing that was out there was like the Burger King right there at Enterprise.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this place? Like, where are we? This is like the middle of nowhere. And now, like, if obviously the area, that area has blossomed and stuff. And so I think that League City had just started coming into its growth at that time. Mm-hmm. And then of course it really took off and exploded. But so it was not the city that it is now. You didn't have the traffic woes and things like that. But the market, even though we entered a recession shortly after I relocated here, I wasn't affected by that. Because again, I'm coming from nothing. So I start here, I have no business at all. And so it wasn't until, I want to say, this might be the first year that we actually have not had a growth year. In other words, like my production's always grown. But I want to say this is our first year, and I think we're down like 10%. But in the grand scheme of my team and their volume, 10% for us is nothing, right?
Well, and in this market, it is, I mean, this is the first time in my career where I'm like, yo, red flag. Like, this is wild.
Yeah.
Like, I had a kid the other day, you know, I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm 33. So I get half like first time home buyers and then half, you know, people selling their first home, buying their second, and then some of their parents and stuff.
Right.
But, you know, I get the, you know, we're looking for first time home buyers grants and stuff. You take those right now, you're in the high 8s.
Yeah.
And it's alarming. I mean, I don't remember 2000 really, but that's what they're saying is like, yeah, we haven't seen that since 2000. So, you know, you saying that y'all are not going to have a growth year with y'all's historic production tells me kind of like, wow, that's a good meter of like what the market's doing.
Right.
And it's funny, like we have our office, we get a lot of brand new agents. So
right.
It's funny because they're just up at the office working, like they don't know any different.
That's right.
And it's kind of like everybody else is, you know, freaking out, but they're just like, oh, this is the job. Like they don't know any different. So
right.
I always tell them, I'm like, hey, if y'all can make it in this market, you can make it in any market.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's how I felt again, 08, 09, because I was just starting to build my business here. Obviously even in 08, even though I've been here since mid 07, I didn't transfer my license to RE/MAX Space Center until like January of 2008. So I took 6 months, wanted to get a lay of the land. I didn't know anything about this area, right? And so even then, my production that first year was less than what I had closed in my last year in Dallas. And so to me, I'm like, okay, well, I knew I was going to have to rebuild. I wasn't doing I'm not by any stretch of the imagination I wasn't this top producer. I mean, I was at the office I was at. But when you look back and say, okay, my last year in the Dallas area, I think I only closed like 26 deals that year, but I was like the number 2 producer at the time. And so I knew that, okay, 08, I knew it was going to be kind of a building year. And it did. And I still closed 11 deals for someone who knew no one, which I don't think is terrible, obviously. So it just kept growing and growing. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that our business is down this year. The market, it's been very challenging for a lot of people. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, who have had to get other jobs, agents. And so it's definitely a year of change. And I think that the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of agents, unfortunately, have to exit the business. I don't remember who had the statistic or the estimate last week, but my husband said, yeah, they're estimating about 500,000 to 600,000 agents are going to exit the business in the next year or two. So, but honestly, I kind of think we need it. I hate to say that. Sorry.
Absolutely. I definitely, it was so easy 18, 19, 20, 21 that people were just getting licensed, and literally you had a license, you were going to find deals.
Right.
And I'm not going to say names, but there's brokerages where I know when I get an offer from them, it's just like, was this agent like trained? Did they take any test? Were they vetted at all?
Right.
And that's what we do not need. We need a higher level of professionalism in this industry. And like you said, I mean, 600,000 agents quit. How many agents are in the United States active? Like a little over 1 million. So is that like,
I thought it was over 2.
2? I mean, but still,
I could be wrong.
25% of agents. That's crazy.
Yeah, and my concern is the ones that need to leave, and again, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody that's in this business. We're all trying to do what we're trying to do. But my concern is the ones that are going to leave are not the ones that need to leave. In other words, the ones that are doing 1 to 5 deals a year because this is play money for them, right? Those are the ones who will stay because and again, no disrespect to anybody, maybe they have a spouse that makes really good money. They don't have to work, right? The ones that I think are going to leave are the middle ground agents who, again, may be an agent like me when I was in Dallas who was doing about 26 deals a year. they're going to have no choice but to leave if they're providing quite a bit of income to their family.
Right. Just because they caught it at a bad time, and they are good at what they do, but they just caught it at a bad time. And yeah, I mean, like that's really a great point.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you're a part-timer and you have a job and you can float the bills without doing a deal, you're going to stay. Wow. I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah. So that's my concern, is that the ones that I think that truly are doing this as a career, and again, no disrespect, how people choose to do their business, that's their business. But I'm afraid we're going to lose some really good agents over the next couple of years because of the fact that they're going to have to go find something else. Because again, even if you're doing 25 deals, 26 deals a year, if you go down to five deals a year and you're, an equal contributor to your relationship or marriage, that's a big hit to your income.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's help these people that are good agents that are just having a hard time right now. So you obviously came from Dallas. You came here, you had to start over, literally. You had to just rebuild, start over. What are some things that these people can do? Because so in 2007, obviously we had the internet, but it wasn't to the point that it is now. I mean,
right.
I have been so fortunate to have started my career at a time where, Instagram has been huge for me. I can, make videos. I'm going to, I can post these podcasts on there, and it's really helped my business, Instagram and Facebook, because I can post one reel and get 1,200 views on it. So what's more effective, doing that one video with 1,200 views, or like going and door knocking 1,200 doors? I just feel like you can scale so much easier for free, literally for free.
Right.
So what are some things you did back then where you said, okay, just moved here, don't know anybody, don't even know the area, but I got to get some stuff going. Like, what are some things you did?
Well, and so obviously what I did, a lot of people would probably disagree with doing. It just depends on who you talk to. But one thing that I knew that I had when I was in Dallas was I had a website and I had a web presence, and I had IDX on that site. And again, I think I got my website, the same website I have to this day, although it's changed. I've had it since 2005. So I knew when I started looking at offices and where I wanted to transfer my license to, I started looking at the agents in that office. And what I found was that most of them didn't have a website. Mm-hmm. Not a big deal, because back then you just didn't need one. And I think those who did have a website, which again were very few at RE/MAX Space Center, and I don't remember how many agents were there at the time, maybe 100, 120.
Wow, that many.
Yeah. So either you had a combination of the few that had the HAR site that was provided, which is fine. But I remember there were a couple who had an actual website, and I remember Pam Archer was one of them. She was one of the few at the time who had a website. And so I knew that I was bringing that web presence with me. So that was already one advantage. I got a lot of my business in Dallas from my web presence, but also namely that IDX site.
What does IDX mean for people who don't know?
So IDX brings listings to a website, basically. Like even HAR, I think, has a way you can
link.
Feed.
So I could make my website, link my HAR to my website. So when people go to blakebaker.net, there's my listings right there.
Correct. But it's actually an IDX site brings anybody's listings over. So prior to Zillow and all these mobile apps, that's what people used was IDX.
So they could go to your website and say, I want a 4-bed, 2-bath under this price, and then it would pop right up, and that's all on your website.
That was all on my website.
I like it.
And it was through, back then my website, I think it was hosted by iHouse or something. And so the IDX was through another company, third party, and they just linked them together. But so I got a lot of leads off of that. I would get hundreds of leads a year just off of people registering because they wanted to use my IDX site. And also because Dallas doesn't have a public portal, or they didn't at the time, like HAR does now. And so that was how people looked. Realtor.com existed back then. Zillow had just, when I was still in Dallas, had just come into the real estate world online. And so this was all new. But so I brought that with me. But I knew, okay, I don't have a sphere, so how am I going to meet people other than my web presence, which we had to totally modify for all the keywords for League City and all of that. But so I started doing Google pay-per-click at the time. And so that was where I got my initial set of business from. And we did that for a couple of years. And it wasn't really until we started buying Zillow leads, which I know everybody's like, ooh, Zillow's the devil. It wasn't until we started buying Zillow leads that we started seeing business really pick up. And then those things combined, and my husband taking a more active role in the Google pay-per-click campaigns, that's when business really started coming in, to the point that I was so inundated that I was having to refer a lot of that, off. I could only work so much. So that's just what I did in the early days. I know a lot of people don't like Zillow and they don't feel like you should have to buy online leads. I didn't have a choice. It was that, or I had to get out and meet people. And I knew that was going to be a long game. And my husband and I had goals that we needed to reach. And so I knew that's what I had to do to get some business.
Yeah. Kind of a shortcut, essentially, rather than, like I said, you're scaling, you're being a lot more efficient with your reach. I mean,
right.
It's a way bigger, you're casting a huge net.
Yeah. Instead of going and knocking on hundreds of doors or sending out mailers, which mailers, they can work. I mean, I'm not saying they can't. And we do send out mailers to this day, but we have such a brand now that we're very strategic in anything that we do. It's, again, who's going to see this and have they seen my face many times? And, a lot of people in the business and outside of the business like to joke around and say, oh, these realtors with their 20-year-old pictures. Well, in some cases, there's a reason for that. Like the picture that I have that's now 12 or 13 years old, I don't know specifically. It's so heavily branded. People recognize faces. They don't recognize names necessarily. Yeah. Now, I think that we're at that point where they do know my name, but there's a very big reason why I can't change that photo. It's a brand. And so it's been very challenging. So that's why we have like a team picture, and that's been updated, but we still have to go back to that same photo. And people are probably like, well, how old is Monica now that she's had this picture on that billboard for many years? But it's hard to get away from that brand.
Yeah, man, I'm riding a 4-year-old photo right now.
Yeah.
So
well, that's not terrible.
Yeah.
Unless you've changed dramatically and have full gray hair now or something, I don't think that that's terrible.
Nah, just a little right here. Salt and pepper.
See, nobody will notice.
Nah. So on this market, I mean, we've already kind of talked about it a little bit. What do you think is kind of the answer to how we're going to get out of this mess that we're in?
Define mess. Are you talking like where? What are we referring to? There's so many messes now.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously the Fed keeps just hiking rates because, I mean, I don't understand all the ins and outs of what the Fed does and why, but they've printed a ton of money. I mean, everything's more expensive. Seems like since COVID, everything is just, our grocery bill has almost doubled probably.
Everything has doubled.
So the problem with the market right now is, and people did get used to those 3% rates. It's like they saw them go to 5 and they were like, oh my God, it's just crazy. It's too expensive now. Yeah. It's like, well, historically 5 to 6 was like pretty normal. Like when I got in the business, it was like 5.5 was about what it was.
Right.
But it was inventory was like so great because you could get a listing. It would sell pretty quick. If you had a buyer, you could usually find them a house like easy. Like it was, when I got in this business, it was just so fun. Like I should have done it way earlier, honestly, but
that's a good way to put it. It was fun.
Yeah. And not that it's not fun now, but it's a little bit less fun.
It's a little less fun.
Yeah.
The business has changed so much. And that's something that I even struggle with on the daily is it's not the same business that it was when I got into it. And I think you can talk to anybody who's been in the business the same amount of time as I have, or even longer. And they'll tell you that it's not quite as fun as it used to be. We live in a very on-demand world.
Yes.
Yeah, and that poses its own challenges. But I think as far as the market and the rates, I don't see the rates going anywhere. They're not going to go down. If they do, I think there was some talk that they would probably go down late next year. I don't know that that's still going to happen. I think what my team and I keep trying to tell people, our buyers, is the rates aren't going anywhere, but home prices, again, they could still continue to rise a little bit. We don't really know, and we can't obviously speculate on that. But we remind them that these are the same people that over the last 2 years have had no problem going in and bidding $30,000 to $60,000 over on a house to secure it, and agreeing to pay that full difference if it fell short on appraisal.
Preach.
So, so they just have to wrap their head around, okay, this is a little different. Maybe my buying power is not as high as it was because the rates are high and the home prices are high and the taxes are high. But again, they just have to wrap their head around it and get comfortable. And I think a lot of buyers are getting comfortable with that. It's just taking time. I mean, I bought my first home back in the early 2000s, and my interest rate, which was a good rate for back then, it was in the 8s. Mm-hmm. And I was in my early 30s, and I thought nothing of it because I wanted the house.
Yep.
And so I think people will eventually get back to that. They have to get comfortable with it.
Yeah. And I tell people, say you have in the 2022, 2021 market, you have a $400,000 house compared to a $400,000 house now. Okay. Back then you had no problem. Oh, let's, 440, waive everything. Oh, let's do it. Go.
Yeah. And
just because you're getting that good rate, like that, it makes you feel better.
Right.
Well, now that $400,000 house, you're probably getting it for 380, 375. But, you are taking a higher rate for sure. But when rates do come back down, and they inevitably will, then you refi. And that's the typical realtor way of like getting, a solution to the problem, which it is. But you can't renegotiate a purchase price.
Right.
That's the problem. Right. So you can always renegotiate your rate.
Right. That's right. So yeah, it's a little uncomfortable for people until they can obviously refinance. But I think they're coming to terms with that. And I think they will as we get further into this and they see that the rates aren't going to go anywhere. It's just unfortunate that this is all right now where we're in what I always call slow season anyway.
Yes.
So now it's like super slow season because people are just like, we'll just wait till early next year. So I just keep telling my sellers, just hang on. Yeah. We're going to get there.
Yeah. We're just going to renew our lease, or I'm getting a lot of people that they want to do something, but then they get the numbers and they just ghost.
Yeah. Well, and the thing on renewing the lease is with the taxes and insurance going up too, well, the landlord's going to pass that cost off to them. And they're not, again, maybe they've got a great landlord that's willing to let them stay for the same price that they've been paying. I don't really know. I know we had to increase one of our tenants' rent and he was not happy about it. And I had to give him an ultimatum. Look, agree or go find something else because right. I can't sit here and take a hit. I kept his rent the same for 2 years. And it was finally like, no, man, it's time to go up because insurance is going up.
And that's the thing is they think that you're just recreationally going up on them just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
Yeah. So you have several rentals?
I have 3 properties that I rent and 2 that are personal use properties. So, and one of them just has been a money pit for me. And I told my husband, we're in that one for the long haul.
The rental?
Yeah. It's been a money pit.
So that's why I want to ask you, I get a bunch of people that they want to look at rent houses and they want to, get an income producing home. And my opinion on residential rentals is it's not as much of a return for probably more work. So like and it really is going to depend on your renter. So I'm sure like you said, do you have good renters and bad renters? And like, what has your experience kind of been like so far with that?
So I have good renters. 2 of them are long-term rentals, and then one's a STR. I have good renters. One is very good. He pays on time. He doesn't really bother us that much. He's the one that kind of gave me a little grief. Actually, my husband, he gave my husband a little grief when it came time to increase the rent. Our whole thing is that right now, that property, because of the renovations I've done on it and potential roof I've got to put on it in a couple of years, that property owes me so much money that if I sold it today, I could get my money back out of it, right? it to me, my long-term rentals are more of an equity play. They're not like I'm not getting rich off the rent. Okay?
Right. That's the thing people need to understand. It is an equity game. It's not like you're going to just start raking in the dough and it's automatic.
Right. And we always factor in when we're like, okay, are we in the red or are we in the black on this property? We always factor in what does the property owe us, because again, we've had to use our money to renovate or do repairs. We had to put a new AC unit in that property. It's a 1965 home. So we had to totally renovate it when the previous tenant had moved out. And so we always factor that in, what we put into the home as far as down payment and stuff. I know a lot of people don't do that. So we're always like, we're trying to get the true, like, what's our net here? And so, yeah, it's definitely an equity play on that one. And we struggle with wanting to sell it. And I'm like, nah, let's keep it.
Well, it's tough right now. For me, if I'm like, okay, do I want to go buy a rental house or do I want to put my money in CDs that pay 5.5%?
Right.
Probably CD, because CD ain't going to call you in the middle of the night saying there's a leak.
True. That's true. Yeah.
So
but our tenant's pretty good. He doesn't do that either. So.
Well, and you probably bought the home for a lot cheaper than what they're going for now.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably got about $100,000 gain on it, but like I said, it owes me more than that.
Right.
So.
But I don't understand how people are buying rentals right now.
Yeah.
Because of rents. I don't think rents have caught up with like how prices have gone up yet. So like I watched a guy pay $180,000 for this 1,300 square foot home in old Pasadena.
Wow.
So I'm looking at this. I'm like, this dude's going to get maybe $1,400 a month. So by the time he pays taxes, insurance, and one thing goes wrong, he's in the red.
Right. No, I agree on that. I personally, and there may be people who disagree with me, I personally don't think it's a great time to buy property. My husband and I haven't bought anything this year. We bought the short-term rental last year and bought our second home the year before, and bought a condo the year before that, and bought the other house the year before that. But I don't think that it's time to buy that. We know we need to do it. I think our thought is, if we're going to buy anything, again, that's going to be long-term, we need to find off-market deals, because going out on the open market and trying to find property is too expensive.
And I think a lot of people make the mistake of just wanting to have an investment house, or it's something they want to do, and they let that override, hey, is this a good or a bad investment?
That's exactly right. And I see that a lot too with the short-term rental market. I see a lot of people enter that market and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're getting into. They just hear that people get rich on it, and it's like the market for that is so saturated right now, depending on where you purchase, that it's not a good investment. We actually had considered buying the townhome right next to our property in Montrose, because he had it on the short-term market. But when we started looking at his numbers and the price of the property, I'm like, this doesn't even make financial sense. So we actually backed off of that, and unfortunately now we're getting new neighbors because he just sold the property. So I'm like, we
That's
should
your
have bought
second
it.
home?
Yeah.
On Montrose?
Yeah.
Yeah, me and my wife go to Velvet Taco right there but that's our favorite spot. But
yeah.
I lived in the Heights for a year, and I fantasize about having a second home back down that way one day.
Yeah, I mean, we love it up there. We're not ready to make that move. Everybody's like, why are you still splitting your time between here and there? And
because I can.
Because I can, yeah. And it's not, we don't want to sell our home here in League City. We don't want to rent it out. We don't owe anything on it. So for me, it just costs taxes and insurance, right? Like, I don't really care. And so we're here. We have a pool at this house. We can't have that at the one in Montrose. We have probably one of the biggest properties for a townhome in Montrose. It's like 4,300 square feet. Wow, so it's a monster.
That's big for down there.
Yeah. And so the footprint is so large that our backyard is nothing. It's literally AstroTurf, but that's okay. That's what we want. We don't want to do yard work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People that have never lived down there don't understand. Like, it is so fun because there's so much all the best restaurants. Oh, we want to go to the Astros game tonight. It's 10 minutes this way.
I
You want to
can
go to the
Uber.
Rockets game. Everything is so accessible.
Yeah.
It's so fun. But
It is.
there's also perks living down here. I mean,
There are.
and our
That's-
business is here.
And that's what I tell people. I'm like, my business is still here. If I am working something up there, I can go stay in town if I need to. But to make that drive back and forth is a lot for me. And I don't have the patience to be in the car. Anybody who drives north on a Friday afternoon knows that it takes a lot of patience.
You'd be an hour each way going.
Easily. And so, and I'm always the driver because it's always my car that we take up there. And so I'm like, okay, let's leave a little earlier. But so I love being up there, but I don't love it enough yet to want to be there full time.
Right.
It's just not my jam quite yet.
It's freaking cool though that you can just go back and forth as you please. That's like a dream of mine, is having multiple spots to just lay my head.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, and you find a lot of things that you do up there. And like I said, I've got a listing I just took over in Oak Forest. And so, it's easy for me to get up there and check on the property because I'm at my Montrose house every weekend pretty much. So it's got its advantages.
Yeah. But going back to the Airbnb thing, the short-term rentals, my buddy works at Leading Edge in Galveston.
Right.
And he was telling me about like the amount of inventory, of people that had their Airbnbs listed and now they're selling them. And he sent me, it was a screenshot of something, but it was wild the amount of inventory they have on those type of homes down there on the island.
It is. And it is true that at one time you could get quite wealthy off of having several. Obviously one's not going to make you wealthy, right? But the problem, in my opinion, is that when COVID hit, people had nothing better to do with their time. And so a lot of people went into the Galveston market to buy second properties. And when they're not using them, what else would they do with them other than short-term rent them? And so you see that market very saturated. We know people who have sold their units, whether it's condo or a home, because they're not making money on it. They're not getting the bookings. So it's, like I said, it's not something that someone should enter into with these big aspirations of making a killing. Like if you build it from the ground up, that's a different story because that's where you can potentially see a sizable amount of money. But going and buying it from somebody, it's just not going to have the return there. And so to me, even my short-term rental, that property is an equity play for me.
Yeah. I mean, anything real estate, really, you're not going to come in and just cash flow a ton. Like it's a very long game. It's harder than people think it is. And you have to scale. Scale is everything with real estate, with being an agent, with being a landlord. It's just, I don't think that's something that kind of sinks in with people. I'm not a big, like, there's so many we call them hype beasts on Instagram and Facebook and stuff that they just are clickbait merchants, and they're just posting like inflammatory things to get you to click and watch. But
right.
So Grant Cardone is one of these guys, he's,
I know who Grant is.
Yeah. So he was like talking about if homes are such a great investment, he preaches like rent. He was like, when you get sick, you don't go buy the hospital. I'm like, okay, but that's different, man. Like,
right.
People need to live somewhere.
Right.
But he's like talking about, he made a good point with rentals. He's like, if you want to get rich doing rentals, you have to go buy literally as many as they will give you a loan for.
Right.
He's like, you scale it. Like, you need to be buying as many, like one or two is like, what are you really doing? Like, if you want to get rich, you need to have as many as you can possibly get.
I would absolutely agree with that. And like I said, and our thought is that our next thing we'll do is try to find some off-market properties that need work and renovate it. We don't mind putting money into renovating something because if I buy on the open market right now, I'm just going to pay a ridiculous amount of money. Even the properties that need a ton of work, they're still expensive, right? And so we've thought about that as our next play. Right now we're just kind of like, we need to see, we're kind of what the buyer we don't like, right? Like we need to see what the rates are going to do, but on investment, I mean, the rates are high. So I think when we bought the property we bought last year, I want to say that we still got it in, again, an investment property. It was still in the sixes. Mm-hmm. It's just not, you're not going to get the good rate that you got for owner-occupied homes. So yeah, we're just kind of like, we're just kind of holding tight. Plus, we don't want to go put a ton of money into properties right now. If we need to, and I hope we don't, but if we were to ever need to float our team and our business with our personal income, we have no problem doing that either. So we're just kind of being conservative with our money right now.
Well, with everything going on right now, like with inflation, plus with the real estate market, plus I hate to get political, but Israel, like all that stuff going on. It's like, who knows what's going to happen, man? Everybody's kind of sitting with clenched fists, it seems like.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And so we're just, we tell our agents that too. We're like, now's not the time to go on these big vacations. Mm-hmm. Even though then I turn around and I'm like, let's go on a big vacation.
Well, you've earned it, obviously. I mean.
Yeah, I'm not, but I still, it's hard for my husband and I to get away. It's easier for me now, if you can believe that, than it is for him, because he does all the, again, all the back end, all the automation, everything is done through him. Whereas now I'm living this weird, I don't know. I told one of my agents, I'm like, this is like purgatory, where I'm in this weird role of leadership, but I'm also still selling. I'm not selling to the level that I had been, but what I tell people is it's more important for me right now to give my team as many at-bats as possible on the leads than me to take them, right? Because as a team leader, I'm still going to take my split. And so, no, am I making 100% of it? No, I'm making whatever the lead source is, that split, 50, 60%, whatever. But it's more important for me to help them provide for their families than it is for me to be like, I'm going to take all these leads.
Yeah, because you're wanting to get to your next stage, and that you're going to have to put some sweat equity into those people. I had Ronnie Matthews on here, and he was saying and he was saying that he pretty much his last 10 or so, 5 or 10, it may have been 5 years. He said that he pretty much all he did was kind of steer the ship. Yeah. He really didn't go on any listing appointments or any of that. And that, the conversation we had right before the podcast, I told you about my team and how it didn't work out for several reasons, and I learned a lot. But what are some ways agents can, for someone who is at that point where, like when this market turns around, I probably will be, like starting a team, and maybe what to look for in possible team members, because I'm sure you have to vet. If someone comes and just says, hey, Monica, I want to be on your team, you're not going to be like, all right, well, come on in. And yeah.
No. So, and I tell everybody because I've spoke on panels at like EXPCon and stuff like that. And I get those questions a lot. Like, when do I start a team? What do I do? And I'm like, well, what are your goals, right? Like if you're an individual and maybe you just want to stay that way, but you're starting to run a little thin in your personal time, then maybe get an assistant who can do all the paperwork and everything for you. Or maybe get a showing agent that you just pay a percentage of every deal that you close to. So again, how that's structured depends on the person. If somebody is looking to grow a team, I tell them, I've been very fortunate. Have I made mistakes along the way with growing my team? Oh my gosh, who hasn't?
Yeah,
right?
You have to. It's part of the game.
You do. You live and you learn. I mean, and that's just life, right? And so I've been very fortunate overall that most of the people who have come to me to be on my team, the majority of them have worked out. 3, 4 have not, and that's okay. I wish everybody all the best in what they choose to do in their career, but I've just been fortunate to have people come to me who were very like-minded like me. They didn't mind losing their identity. That's a big question. So now when someone wants to join us, they're actually vetted by my sales manager, my sales manager is Jolynn Gertzen, and she is great at doing the vetting. They used to be vetted by my one of my ISAs, my inbound sales agents. She was also very good at it. We kind of just didn't need her doing that role anymore. But so they're vetted, and that's a question that we ask them is like, are you comfortable losing your identity? And if they're not, and they start hemming and hawing about that or the splits, then we know that's not going to be a good person for us. If they're already complaining about the splits right out of the chute and they haven't even started working, like, okay, this is not going anywhere.
They either need to not be in the business or go take a crack at being a solo agent.
Correct. And that's what I tell people is like, look, I have an agent now that had come to me, and I love her. She's a hustler. But she came to me and she said, well, I have my own sphere, well, let me back up. She came to me to join on my partner agent, and I'll go into that in a minute because it'll make a little more sense. But she said, I have my own sphere. Once I'm off partner agent and I go to full team agent, can we renegotiate the splits? And I said, and I'm not going to say who it is, obviously. If she's watching, she'll know who I'm talking about. And I said, when we get to that point, let's have a conversation about it then. I said, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Because she was coming from a brokerage and a team that really gave her nothing at all. And I said, it's going to be different. I'm telling you now. And so she graduated from our partner agent program fairly quickly because she's that good, and became a team agent. And she did not even ask to renegotiate the splits because of what I had provided to her, the leads and the value of the team, the support, the mentorship that we give to our team agents. So she didn't ask to renegotiate, and that was good. But
that is good.
Yeah. So, and that's another thing. And so that's, again, this is the segue back to the partner agent. My husband and I, created what we call our partner agent program, because what we got tired of doing is training up these agents. We train them up, and then maybe they can't handle the lead flow. Maybe they just don't want to hustle like that. And that's cool. That's everybody to each his own. But so we came up with this program that we're like, let's create this program where people come in. The splits are not as favorable to them. They still make good money. But it's basically a 90-day trial program. I call it my try it before I buy it program. I want to make sure you're a good fit for me. You need to make sure I'm a good fit for you, and the team's a good fit for you, right? And so that's how everybody who comes to me starts out now, is on the partner agent program. And if they're not converting, if they're not if they're just not working out, then we just part ways with them. Obviously at EXP, I still support them if they stay with EXP, even if they leave the team. But that's kind of how we've also vetted these people, is through partner agent program.
This is a very sink or swim industry.
It is.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of people say they're going to do this, say they're going to do that, and then they just never do.
Right.
And again, that's fine, but this is not the job for you.
That's exactly right. I've had people, not who joined my team, but that I at one point sponsored at EXP, and they had this preconceived notion that commission checks were just going to rain from the heavens. And I'm just like, where do people get that? And so one in particular, he thought that. He said, I can't wait for the checks to start rolling in. And it's kind of the joke with us. It's like, he left. He had to go do something else. He was not able to convert people. It's very much a people business. And, we can tell in the agents who's really good at that converting, even by their mannerisms. Again, we always tell them when we're training them up, you have to be able to mimic the client.
Yes.
Yeah. If they're very, just very serious, you need to keep it professional and serious. And we've had agents on the team who super sweet people. Like I had a girl, super sweet. She was really nice. She was great with clients who were fun and bubbly, but you got that client who wasn't. She didn't know how to handle them. And so it just long term, she couldn't close the majority of the clients. Not everybody is going to be sweet and bubbly all the time, right? So those are things that we look for in people when they're joining the team, and that mindset of, I'm okay losing my identity, because at the end of the day, it's, how many people am I helping? How much money am I still taking home? And what are the opportunities that I, as the agent, are being given by the team leader? I've never been a team leader who just takes their sphere and gives nothing in return.
Yeah.
In fact, I take very little of their sphere. They don't bring me that much sphere.
Compared to what you have already. You don't need it.
Yeah. And they don't have it. My ideal agent is someone, and this has been the entire time I've had a team, my ideal agent is someone who the sweet spot is closes around 10 deals a year.
Yeah.
They're a good agent. They could be a lot better. And that's what we train them up to be, is to be a great agent. And we give them the tools and all the resources to be that. Like they use, again, they take advantage of our automation that helps them stay in touch with their past clients and their current clients. I'm not saying that they should rely solely on that, obviously, but it's there to check in the event that the agent's bogged down showing or whatever. So there's a lot of things that we give them in return.
Yeah. And I think a lot of another preconceived notion that people have in this, when they come into this business, is, sitting on the computer at the office doesn't equate to business. Right. Or like, making sure you have everything's perfect and the best website. It's like, when you're in the beginning, you need to kind of, what's the saying? Just kind of splatter it all on a window and see what sticks.
Right.
And like, I tried it all. I tried cold calling, door knocking, door hangers. I hated all three of those. Cold calling, I got cussed out more than once. And now it's pretty much like, it seems like it's going to head towards the way of like, that's against the law. The amount of robocalls I get on a daily basis is crazy. So what I don't want is my cell phone number coming up as spam risk when I call people.
Right. It's very challenging today to get past that, right? And so we even had to jump through hoops with some of our automation is text check-ins that run through, not through my personal cell or anything. They run through our Ring Central. And so we had to register, and it's a lot of hoops that my husband had to jump through to get that done. But I tell people, you do have to, especially if you're going to be an individual agent, you do have to throw a lot of things at the wall and see what's going to stick. But the agent also needs to be accustomed to tracking, right? Like you can go buy 500 door hangers and they're not going to cost you a lot. But if you're going to invest 2 weeks putting them out on doors and potentially having to get permits to do it, the ROI is probably not going to be there, right? You talked about that. You hit on that early on in this conversation. And so I think a lot of agents, they just shotgun a lot of things out, but they don't know, okay, I'm throwing all this money out, but what's coming back in? What is sticking? What is working? And so that fortunately is a role I don't have to handle for the team. That is one of the roles my husband has done the whole time. And that's why he had to quit or retire or whatever you want to call it. Because he does track everything, like money coming in and money going out and what that return is. And he can tell you what the return is on every single lead source that we have. And if it's not making us money, we'll cut it. There was a time that I had 5 billboards. I have one now, well, 2 if you can't see, double-sided. But that's the only one we have left. Unfortunately, I lost the one that was over T-Bone Tom's. I was disappointed about that one because that was a good one. But they had to take it down for the widening of 146. And I'm not saying to realtors, by the way, that you necessarily are going to get business off of a billboard. So I don't want people to rush out and buy a billboard. It is, again, goes back to that branding. And so we would even track how many people came in because of the billboard.
Right.
The lead counts that we have and the choices that my ISAs have to choose, they have to always ask, where do people come in? There's some really, really obscure stuff that people say, oh, found you wherever, right?
Yeah.
So it's again, just realtors need to be sure they track it. It's a business, and I'm not saying they can't have fun, but it's still your career.
Yeah.
And you have to treat it as such.
Well, when I was younger in the business, I look back on some things and places I was at and things I did, and I'm like, that was not necessarily good for business. So, and I actually did have a billboard over on Spencer in Pasadena, and I never had someone call me and be like, hey, Blake, I saw your billboard. I would like to sell my house. Yeah. It was not like that. It was, hey, you're the guy on the billboard. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, that's more how it was. So
that's funny. Yeah. And I have gotten leads from the billboard. But again, it was when I said earlier that we're very strategic in our marketing and what we do. we always had a billboard in an area that we knew we had a presence and
Right.
could sell real estate in, right? And so when we had the one at Highway 3 right at Clear Lake City Boulevard, I was at REMAX Space Center at the time at that location. So those things all tied in. It all made sense. But we always were strategic about where we placed them, doing mailers if we had a listing or if we sold something to those particular areas. And that's where that same photo had to come in, because people have to visually tie it all together, right? And so I think if someone runs out and gets a billboard like you did, it's not necessarily going to get them business, because people, they don't see your face anywhere else necessarily, right? I'm not saying that you wouldn't have signs near there, but if they don't make that connection, you're not going to get any business off of it. So it's not, the ROI is not great on it. It's more for us at this point. The one that we double-sided that we have left is just for branding purposes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why, I mean, what is everybody doing all day, every day? So that's why I'm on Instagram. That's my thing. I'm like, if people are they're in line at Chipotle swiping. So they're going to see my face.
They are. It's so true. It's so true. And that's my weakness is I'm not like, I don't like Instagram. I despise TikTok. And again, I'm not knocking anybody for how they choose to do business. I think that is for more younger people. I'm not saying people my age can't be on it, but I'm not heavily on that. And so that's definitely, I know that's where it's going.
Yeah.
So I do recognize that, and obviously will adapt accordingly, but just know I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, shoot, we are almost an hour in. Can you believe that?
That's flown by.
I know. Yeah. So I know you're a busy woman. I know you have places to be. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come over here and do this with me.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me to join you. I'm happy to share any insights anytime.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Later, y'all.